Well, I watched the little documentary on the witnesses the other day, and I posted it on my website for those that may want to watch it. It was another expose of the Watchtower's child abuse problem. It's not really anything new. I mean, the first television expose of this problem took place almost 20 years ago. The Dateline program back in 2001, 2002, I believe. This oxygen program, though, had new victims and their stories. And although it's dramatized for television, obviously they're selling a program. Yet the stories are very authentic. And I know that because I do have some experience dealing with the Watchtower and their child abuse policy. I was an elder back the mid-'80s up to the mid-'90s. And, I had never really heard of child abuse in the organization, but unfortunately, relatives of my wife, two different families had girls that were molested by members in the congregation who were also family members of the victims. And in both cases, it was reported to the elders, of course, and nothing happened. In one instance, the elders told the mother of the child not to go to the police, even though they denied it later. But I wasn't part of that congregation, but I went to a meeting where they were hosting the circuit overseer and the district overseer that week. And I asked to meet with them, and I told them the situation, and they were aware of it. And I'll never forget this brother, whom I greatly respected as a spiritual man, he said, we'd like to do something, but our hands are tied. He made that gesture, our hands are tied. And at the time, I didn't really appreciate it, but now I fully understand it. The Watchtower's legal department had commanded them, don't do anything, don't call the police, don't pursue this. They tied his hands. That was a circuit overseer. Our hands are tied. And in the other instance, I wrote a letter to the governing body, to a specific governing body member that I had met and worked with out in service, and I thought, well, I'll let him know what's going on. And I don't think he replied to me personally. It was from, the Watchtower. And sure enough, there was that expression, wait on Jehovah. We're not going to do anything, wait on Jehovah. And this was back, maybe 1990, and I thought, all right, I can do that. But as these other stories started coming out 20 years ago, that was the standard line given to any victim or their advocates. Wait on Jehovah. In fact, Bill Bowen, who started up the Silent Lambs, he was an elder that ran into this in his congregation, and he started this campaign. He secretly recorded an elder from Bethel. I guess he was with the legal department, and they were conversing on the phone, and the brother says, wait on Jehovah, my brother, wait on Jehovah. That's the standard byline. Don't do anything, just, if God takes care of it, fine. If not, well, we're not going to do anything. Well, that is interesting, wait on Jehovah, because, Jehovah's Witnesses have no, and this is really the tragedy, the Watchtower teaches Jehovah's Witnesses the Bible. They go to all these meetings and study the material, and try to apply it, and they have a ministry. It seems that, I don't know, but it's hard to detect that Jehovah's Witnesses have any real faith in Jehovah, because when they're confronted with something that is shocking, like the Watchtower's callous disregard for child abuse victims, it's like they have no concept that, well, what does God have a say in this matter? Well, I believe he does. Even though the Watchtower has rendered him impotent, God's already judged them and given them the thumbs up. That was, 1918, where the messenger of the covenant came, and they're good, right? It's interesting what Jesus said, though, in this regard. As regards, he was sending his disciples out in a ministry, and he says, a lamp is not brought out to be put under a basket or under a bed, is it? It's not brought out. Is it not brought out to be put on a lampstand? Well, makes sense. But then he says something else. For there is nothing hidden that will not be exposed. Nothing is carefully concealed that will not come out in the open. Whoever has ears to listen, let him listen. It's interesting. Jesus used that expression a lot, and he used it in Revelation as well when speaking to the 7 congregations. Let he that has an ear hear. And those were his judgments against his own congregations. Some congregations had a Jezebel in them who was teaching God's slaves to commit fornication and enticing them into idolatry, and Balaam. The devil is, he's much more clever than Jehovah's Witnesses imagine, because the Watchtower has sort of disarmed Jehovah's Witnesses. Satan is out there. He's out to get us. He's out there. Don't leave the protection of the congregation, because he's like a roaring lion. He's out there. He's not in here. Of course, for those who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, the devil is like, oh, these people they're false prophets. They don't even believe in Jesus. They don't, right? But he uses a different tactic for Jehovah's Witnesses. He encourages this blind trust in the leadership. Oh, this is Jehovah's glorious organization. It can do no wrong. These governing body men speak the word of God. And so Jehovah's Witnesses will just close their eyes and plug their ears. Oh, there's this apostate lies. Thousands and thousands of people have been sexually abused by people that call themselves Jehovah's Witnesses, and the governing body says that these are apostate-driven lies. Nobody cares about our children like Jehovah's organization. If you've not seen that, it turn your stomach. I have to applaud Trey Bundy. He's an investigative journalist. Apparently, he's devoted his entire journalistic career to investigating the Watchtower. And he produced this program that was recently aired. But I have to attribute that to what Jesus said. There is nothing carefully hidden that will not be brought to light. The Watchtower has concealed their crimes, you might say, and now a ton of lawsuits are coming out. New York passed a law last summer that there's no statute of limitations on sexual crimes. So that has been a big hindrance. Well, in the last few months, 1,300 victims have come forward just in the state of New York. And those are just the ones who have come forward. How many others have said, well, it's not worth it, or I'll forget about it, I'll forgive it, whatever. So there is a lot of victimization and very little justice. And what's the end of it? Well, it's not going to be good. Not for the Watchtower, anyway. There's the 82nd Psalm. In fact, Jesus quoted this when he was accused by the Pharisees of making himself God's equal because he said he was God's son. And he said, well, the scripture says you are gods, referring to the judges of Israel, those who have godlike powers over others. But that 82nd Psalm really applies to the Christian congregation, to those who are anointed sons of the Most High. It makes that expression. In verse 6, I have said, you are gods, all of you are sons of the Most High. So I believe the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses is presided over by those who are anointed. Maybe some are of the seed of Satan, like those false apostles who are just pretenders. We don't know who's who, but Jehovah expects those who he has entrusted with oversight. He's given them godlike powers to judge. And so that's the context of the 82nd Psalm here. God takes his place in the divine assembly, that is, in the congregation. In the middle of the gods, he judges. And now this is God speaking. How long will you continue to judge with injustice and show partiality to the wicked? Here's the obligation of the gods. Defend the lowly and the fatherless. Render justice to the helpless and destitute. Rescue the lowly and the poor. Save them out of the hand of the wicked. That's what God expects of those whom he has put in charge as overseers. Can the Watchtower possibly defend its actions? Can it say it has rescued the poor from the hand of the wicked one? They have put child abuse victims through agony when all they had to do was acknowledge that they have been abused and offer assistance and crush the wicked pervert who victimized them. And you can do that so easily. You just pick up the phone. Not to call the legal department of the Watchtower, the local police. We've got a fella here. He's accused of committing a crime against a child. And you give them their address. And they do the rest. And there's your second witness, by the way. Oh, we need 2 witnesses to this crime. Well, how about a medical examination and the testimony of police who interrogate the accused? They're experts at that. Jehovah's Witnesses elders are not crime investigators. So, suffice to say, they have failed miserably. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of victims who testify to their failure. And unfortunately for them, this is going to be coming out more and more in court. These 1,300 people in New York have legal representation, and at the governing body, this is one thing that was new in this recent documentary. The lawyer, the Zulkin, he's a pit bull. He hopes to get the governing body members on the stand and put them under oath to testify, because they're the head of this organization. They sanctify these policies, presumably, even though it's run by lawyers. They give it their blessing, so they are responsible. What did the Apostle Paul write to Timothy? I think it's 1 Timothy chapter 5. He said, "Do not lay your hands hastily upon any man, neither become sharers in the sins of others." The Watchtower has become sharers in the sins of pedophiles. They've kept them from being exposed. They've kept them from being prosecuted by the law. Even though the Apostle Paul said that the authorities, the superior authorities, are placed in their position by God himself, and they are our public ministers for the good and the avengers for those who do evil. And whoever takes their stand against them is opposed to God. So the Watchtower has taken a stand against God's arrangement. They will not cooperate with police at all. Now they say, well, yeah, if the victim wants to call the police, it's up to them. But that wasn't their policy before. They would persecute the victim if they brought in the cops. So Jehovah's seen all of this. Just because he hasn't brought punishment yet doesn't mean he's not going to. And if you know anything about God, then you know that's true. So after God lays out what he expects of them, then he says, they do not know, nor do they understand. They're walking about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are being shaken. The foundations of the Christian congregation. What does it say in the letter of James? This is true worship. Look after orphans and widows in their tribulation and remain unspotted from the world. That's it. That's the foundation. Look after orphans and widows in their tribulation. Is there any worse tribulation than a child who's been groomed and sexually abused by an adult, and then she is disbelieved by the elders, persecuted if they speak out? All the foundations of the earth are being shaken. Now we're back to Jehovah saying, I have said, you are gods. All of you are sons of the Most High. But you will die as men do. And like any other prince, you will fall. And then the psalmist says, rise up, O God, and judge the earth, for all the nations belong to you. So, the Watchtower has to stand before God and, well, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching.